Excuse me. So as we left off in the last chapter of Misty Runs and Runs and Runs, Misty, after running the better part of a mile and galloping wide open and having been deprived of 90% of the oxygen she'd need for her depleted muscles, how she could have run to this day eludes me. She had collapsed under me as if she'd just been shot through the heart. And now I'm flying through the air. I look down, I see Misty tumbling in the air beneath me, and my first thought was, poor Misty, as I looked up to see where her trajectory would take her into the boulders. My second thought was tree, and my third thought wasn't really a cognitive thought at all. It was a blinding bolt of pain. I'd hit a sugar maple tree. I'd taken the limb across my chest, and my leg had hit the stem of the tree, the trunk. The pain was blinding. I don't even remember landing on the ground. I wasn't really knocked unconscious. I was just blinded by the pain, and Lori had skidded Rocket to a stop on the road above me, a four-hoof skid, and had thrown the reins down, leaving Rocket ground-tied. Excuse me, and whether she leapfrogged once or vaulted right down beside me, I don't know. I was still, She said, "Are you okay?" And I said, "No, my leg's broken, but get Misty, she can't breathe." And Lori was regaining her normal composure. The panic was kind of ending for her, and she was kind of torn. I could see the look of consternation as she looked back and forth. I said, "You can't do anything for me, but Misty can't breathe." I could hear her gasping because I had Misty's chin pulled right into her chest. And the reins were still latched, of course, around the saddle horn when the incident had happened. Lori hesitated, but then ran the 15 yards down the ditch, or about that, to where Misty was mostly on her side, but her legs up a little bit in amongst the boulders. About that point in time, Rhonda came skidding up on her horse Sky. And Sky, of course, true to nature, just went into full spook mode, began to dance around uncontrollably. By this time, I was kind of getting up on my elbows a little bit, trying to take in what was going on. And Lori, characteristically cursing like a sailor, said, "Rhonda, get Sky a couple of driveways down. The fool spooky thing's spooking Rocket." And I looked up, and indeed, Lori's little pony Rocket, who was ground-tied again, was starting to roll his eyes and prance around. Now, if the horse has its reins down and is going to run, that's a very dangerous situation. So Rhonda, cursing to match Lori, retreated with Sky, and about that time, Cindy skidded up on her old mare Fancy, vaulted out of the saddle, and at this point in time, Lori's getting Misty up on her feet. She's got the reins unlashed. It was a bit of a battle for her. I could hear Misty drinking in great draughts of air. And I'm clutching my leg. I'm certain it's broken, right? So I'm crawling up out of the ditch towards Fancy and Cindy. Lori's regained her composure totally. Rhonda's cursing Sky, 30 yards down the road or something, as the big old thing just continues to spook. So I'm crawling up out of the ditch as Lori's got Misty on her feet, and she yells to Cindy, "Grab Rocket, he's spooking with that fool Sky." Now Cindy's on the verge of tears. She's looking down at me in the ditch, the whole scene. She's just overwhelmed, but she has the composure to, yes, grab a hold of Rocket's reins. So I crawl up out of the ditch about the same time, dragging my leg behind me, as what I see Lori bringing Misty up out of the ditch further down. Misty's limping heavily on her right front. But she's walking, so this is a good sign. So as I come up onto the grade of the road, I grab Fancy's stirrup and I pull myself up. And as I'm doing that, I look at her flank and she's dry. Fancy is not covered in sweat. So I plunge my hand up in between her rear legs up onto her teats, and it's like a furnace. Unthinkingly, I unlatch the girth strap and I push the saddle over the far side of the old horse. Just as I look, Lori's now got Misty coming down towards us, and she catches the play. I plunge my hand up into Fancy's jugular. She is pumping like, well, her blood is congealing. She's pumping softballs. The old mare is in a desperate way. Lori catches the play. She sees this, right? But I'm like, a quick glance at Cindy. Because Cindy's a rookie to the whole scene, right? Lori, catching the play again, she unsaddles Misty, grabs the saddle from the ground on the far side of the Fancy. She's got both saddles. And she says, "Can you walk, Scott?" I said, "I don't know. I'm just starting to test my leg on the ground." She said, "Well, you're going to have to." And as she's picking up the saddle, she yells to Rhonda. She says, "Rhonda, we've got 2 overheated horses. You know what to do." Because Sky isn't suffering. Sky's just been big horse running along, hasn't really spent itself. She said, "Get down to the farm as fast as you can, Rhonda. Hope Lauren's there." It's my dad. "Jean will be there. You know what to do. Go now." And she tears off with the saddles up into one of the driveways. Threw them on somebody's step, I guess. Now Cindy catches the play. Despite the fact she's in tears and kind of panicky and stuff, she's like, "Oh, Scott, I didn't, Rhonda was yelling back, Lori was yelling back, I didn't know, I just kept running, like, how bad's Fancy?" And she's just, overwhelmed with the situation. I'm like, "Well, we've got to get the horses moving." I don't know, Cindy. But everything's going to be okay. I don't know if it's going to be okay. I don't know if the mare's going to make it or not. I've never seen anything. I've heard about horses being overheated, being foundered, but I've never seen anything like this. Meanwhile, I'm trying to test my leg. Like, yeah, I can stand on it. There's nothing poking out through my jeans. It would turn out it wasn't broken. Lori tears back down the drive, having thrown the saddles up on somebody's stoop. She's looking at me, "Can you walk?" I'm like, "Yeah, I think so." She hands me, "Well, you've got to take Misty. And come on, Cindy, we've got to move these horses now." Lori says she's collected her usual composure. She says, "I'll have to rock it for a bit, and then I'll make the best time I can. We'll get set up. You guys got to move." Well, this is the case, right? Rhonda's already gone. Lori leads Rocket off, and Cindy and I begin to move. Now, Fancy is out of it. She doesn't know where she is. She doesn't know she is. She's just moving. And I'm astounded she can. Now, Cindy, smart and composed girl, but she is 12 years old, and this is a situation, she's saying, "You guys have been trying to tell me how things can go bad. I never envisioned anything like this. I just kept galloping along. Everybody's calling back in a panic. Oh, Scott, what have I done to my Fancy?" "It's going to be okay, Cindy. It's going to be okay." Well, I don't know if it's going to be okay, right? I have no idea. When Cindy's not looking, I thrust my fingers up into the old mare's jugular, and again, she's just pumping chunks, right? Wow. So we head off down the highway. I don't know what anybody driving by would have thought, right? I'm limping. Misty's limping. Fancy's just got her head down. She's out of it, right? I'm distracting Cindy. Because again, Cindy did gather her composure very well. She saw the scene. I was telling Cindy by way of distraction what had transpired with Lori yelling, "Rodeo, rodeo," and me yelling, "Stay back." Cindy, despite, you know, being upset, panicky, worried about her mare, she had it together. She said, Lori, what was she thinking? Like, Rocket, I saw what he looked like when I came up. He couldn't have taken you coming down onto him. He'd have collapsed. Cindy went on to say, Lori's fearless in the saddle, but sometimes I wonder about her judgment. So I'm keeping Cindy distracted by describing the sort of play-by-play that she hadn't really known about because she was a considerable distance back, Fancy being the slowest of the horses. So Cindy regained her composure, you know, dried her tears and stuff, and I kept assuring her everything's going to be okay. I said, you've heard the story about overheated horses. Rhonda will be there first. Lori, hopefully Dad will be there. Mom will certainly be there. Everything will be set up. Everything's good. But I don't know if it is. All along, I'm, you know, hey, big guy in the sky, don't let this old mare die. It'll just devastate this poor girl. Misty's overheated, but she's blown out and she's limping as badly and as slowly as I am, and she's tuckered right out. But, you know, I'm checking her jugular and temperature and pulse and stuff. She's not anywhere near. Well, she's not even in trouble, really. But Fancy, I don't know. With every stride, I'm thinking, is she just going to keel over, right? So I see this has gone on, I'll leave it here. And there's a few more chapters in this story. It goes on.